Good morning, a pleasant good morning to all. My name is Miss Scarlett, and I work at CC Sweeting Senior High School. On our team, we Today's topic is solving equations with variables on both sides. All right. Okay. This morning lesson, we're dealing with solving equations with variables on both sides. Now, we have here one student who right away, since seeing the topic, he says, that sounds so difficult. Our objective by the end of this class would be to use the property of equality, which is using inverse operations to simplify our equations. And eventually, we should be able to solve equations with variable terms on both sides of the equal sign. How do we solve equations with variables on both sides? To solve equations with variables on both sides, you can use inverse operations and just 3 simple steps. Now, we've already used inverse operations. Those of you who attended the classes that were done on solving equations, 1-step equation, 2-step equations, you should be familiar by now with using inverse operations. Okay, how do we solve equations with variables on both sides? And here we have the 3 steps. You can write the steps. Step number 1, first you will combine variable terms by adding or subtracting one of the variable terms to each side. That is step number 1. Step number 2, you can combine constant terms by adding or subtracting one of the constant terms to each side of your equation. And then our 3rd step will be to undo multiplication or division. And we did that as our final step when we were solving 2-step equations. Now, I'm going to ask students, do you have a pencil and a pen?
Okay, it appears as though we can, all right, we can go.
Okay. Now, how do we solve equations with variable on both sides? Remember the 3 steps you just wrote? It says solving an equation with variables on both sides. What was the first step? The first step is that we should combine variable terms by adding or subtracting one of the variable terms to each side. Now look at our equation. Our equation was, or is, 2x take away 4 is equal to 26 take away 3x. What are we doing? We're going to try to combine our variable terms. So we look at the term on the right side. We notice we have take away 3x. So what was the opposite of take away 3x? add 3x to each side. When we do that, we would have simplified to some extent, and what are we left with? 5x, 2x plus 3x will give us 5x. Take away 4 is equal to 26. What happened to the x, the 3x? Take away 3x on the end. It canceled out with its inverse, which was plus 3x. So now we're left with 5x, take away 4 is equal to 26. Our step number 2 says that we must combine our constant term by adding or subtracting. What is our constant term? We can say -4 or take away 4. The opposite of that is add 4. So when we add 4, what happens? That the -4 and +4, they cancel out, and we're left with 5x is equal to 30. Are we finished? No, we still have 5x, so we need to do what now? So step number 3, use multiplication or division. And yes, 5x is the same as 5 times x. So we divide both sides by 5. And so we're left with x is equal to 6. Okay, our objectives. How do we solve with variables? Okay, they're good with that. To solve equations with variables on both sides, you can use inverse operations and just 3 simple steps. How do we solve with variables on both sides? Step 1, everybody had step 1? Then our step 2 said, combine constant terms by adding or subtracting one of the constant terms to each side. Okay. Step number 3 says, undo multiplication or division. Okay. Step number 1, our first example. How do we solve with variables on both sides? Solving an equation with variables on both sides. To solve of this equation, our equation 5x plus 2 is equal to 2x plus 14. We have variables on both sides. We have 5x on the left and 2x on the right. And so what should we do? We can subtract 2x from each side. When we subtract 2x from each side, we have 5x. Notice we've lined up what we're going to subtract. 2x will cancel out. And now we will simplify. And now we have 3x plus 2 is equal to 14. What type of equation do we have now? They can answer, they can, what side? They can give a quick answer. Did we get answers to that?
So May says one-step equation, Lynette says an expression, and Kavon says two-step.
Very good. Two-step equation is correct. Now, notice we have 3x plus 2 is equal to 14. That is a two-step equation. So now what do? We now have to go ahead and solve our two-step. What will we do to solve that two-step? We should subtract 2 from each side. Go ahead and subtract 2 from each side, everyone. And when we subtract 2 from both sides, what happens? On the left-hand side, the 2 is canceled out. And now we are left with, we will simplify now. And we have 3x is equal to 12. Are we finished? No, we're not, right? We have 3x, and to find the solution, we're looking for the value of x. So what do we do now? Go ahead. If you know what to do, go ahead and do it before I show the answer. We should divide each side by 3. And so now our equation should look like this. And now we have the 3 will cancel out. X is left by itself, and 12 divided by 3 is equal to 4. Now, okay, we did this one, but you can go ahead and solve this one since we attempted it before. Are they working, Ms. Woodside? I don't see anything. I don't see.
You could check the chat on the side of your screen share, but they worked through the first one well. Very good student. Now try number 2.
I don't see the chat on the side. Probably something I'll have to look at later on. Let me see.
To the bottom of your on
Notes.
where you see screen share.
Not on the. I don't see it. Nothing is at the bottom.
Okay, we'll work on it.
We work with after. Anyone is finished with that?
Kenisha saying she got x equals 6. Cherish is saying Cherish and Amia are also saying x equals 6.
Okay, let's continue. So what should we do? Using our steps, we can add 3x to each side. When we add 3x to each side, our equation, our working should look like this. And as we simplify, we notice that is gone. The 3x, the minus 3x is gone. And now we can simplify. And when we simplify, we now have 5x minus 4 is equal to 26. Are we finished? No, we have a two-step equation now, so we need to continue working. And we now must add 4 to each side. Remember, we're doing inverse operations. And when we add 4 to each side, our equation, our working can look like this. And the 4 minus 4 plus 4 will cancel out. And now we can simplify, and we now have 5x is equal to 30. And are we finished? No, we still need to find 4x. So what do? We will divide. Step number 3, we will divide. And when we divide both sides by 5, we now have the 5 for the x will be canceled out. And we simplify, and so x is 6. Congratulations to those who got it right.
A lot of the students are asking when you, on your step 1, when you get to when you're trying to group variable sides, or when you're grouping variable sides, why we chose to add the 3. And a lot of them didn't understand why you're selecting which variable side.
Okay, now let's go back to this. Why did we add the 3? Notice we want positive x. 2 is positive. and 3 is negative or take away 3x. We need to get the variable terms on one side. Now, if we add, if the opposite of take away 3x is plus 3x. So if we add 3x to both sides, let us look at the top. We can see that it's now positive 2x plus 3x. And the positive 3x will cancel out the negative or the minus 3x. So now we have positive 5x. If we had taken away the 2x, then we would have been left with negative for the x. We're trying to keep the x positive. Okay, and those persons who wrote the steps, let's keep looking at our step to see what the step tells us. It tells us first that we must combine the variables. With practice, you will become a little more comfortable working with it. Let's see the next one, and we have 5x is equal to x plus 6. Go ahead and work and see what we must do. Follow the steps. We have 3 steps. Follow the steps.
Just a quick reminder, students, can you please place all of your answers in the chat? All of your answers in the chat. The Q&A is for questions for further clarification. So we put all of our solutions in the chat for the panelists to review.
Do we have answers?
We have x equals 0, x equal 1.5, x equal 3, x equal 4, x equal 1, x equal 2. We have a lot of answers, so I think they would want to pay attention to the process of this one.
Okay, now what should we do? Following step number 1, we should subtract x from each side. And when we subtract x from each side, this is what happens. The x on the right side is canceled out. And so we now have, when we simplify, we now have 4x is equal to 6. Now, so what do? We should divide each side by 4. When we divide each side by 4, our working should look like this. And so when we simplify, what happens? The 4 is canceled out and x is equal to 6 divided by 4. What do you notice there in our answer? We did fractions before. What our answer is? It's a fraction. What type of fraction is it? See if we'll get answers to that.
Improper fraction. Good job, Kenisha. Good job, Tavara.
Very good. That is correct. But we also know that when we working with fraction, our answers must be in simplest form. So can you please simplify that answer and do not leave it as an improper fraction? Do we have answers now for that?
Nicholas says is at 1.5. Aaron, I think, also gave us a 1.5. Destiny, 1.5, and Tavara gave us 3/2.
That's still 3/2, Raz. It's still an improper fraction. It's not simplest form. It was broken down, but it's still an improper fraction. So let's
gives us 3.2 equals 1.5. Good job. Ross, 1.5.
So when we simplify and we convert, we have 3 over 2, or as a mixed fraction, it is 1.5. Now, it is 1.5, and 1.5 is the same as 1.5. So if you have 1.5, that is correct. Okay, go ahead and work, and I hope most of you are feeling comfortable. If you follow the steps, you will be able to get it all done correct. Everybody is working? Everybody's working hard?
Yes, the answers are coming in. Hold on, I don't.
Okay, follow the steps. I'm just giving some time for the persons who are working a little slower. Follow the steps and we will ace this. It's not difficult if you follow the steps.
Students, please put your final answers, as in your X equal to some number, in the chat so that the panelists can see. The Q&A is not for your final answers. The Q&A is for your questions and concerns.
Okay. And because it's an equation, we can't just write the number. We have to write it. X is equal to whatever your solution is. And then we'll check to see. Could we start, Ms. Woodside?
Yeah, we have quite a few responses in the chat. We can start.
All right, so we're starting with step 1. Step 1 says subtract 4 from each side. Have you done that? If you have done that, then we should have take away 4x on both sides, and your working should look like that should be canceled out. Your working would look like this. And now we will have to simplify. So now on the left side, we now have 20. On the right side, we have 2x. Are we finished? No, we still need to find 4x. So what should we do now? 2x means x times 2. So we divide both sides by 2. And your working should look like this. Okay, we missed the 2 on the right-hand side, but we know that we were dividing both sides by 2. And so 10 is equal to x. 10 is equal to x, or we can turn it around the other way, turn it around and put x on the left side. So x is equal to 10. How many?
We have more yeses than no, but we do still have a handful of no's. Too many no's.
All right, so let's try again. We have, now notice, we can work with integers too. We have negative x plus 4 is equal to negative 9.8 plus x. Come on, you have 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes to complete. Remember, we're working with time. We have a certain amount of time to get out of this class. And so okay, how the answers are coming? how the working is going.
We're seeing x equal 29, x equals 6.9. We have a x equal 5.8.
Okay.
And we are admittedly having students that have challenges with decimals.
Oh.
X equal 9.4, x equal 10.2.
Okay. All right. Let's start our working. So our first step should be add x to each side. When we add x to each side, our working should look like this. The x on the left will be canceled out, and now we have, to simplify, we now have 4 is equal to negative 9.8 plus x. So that gives us 4 is equal to negative 9.8 plus 2x. Now we have what type of equation now? We have a two-step equation. What should we do? Step number 2 says we must combine the constant terms. And so we will add 9.8 to each side. When we add 9.8 to each side, notice on the left-hand side how we're lining up. 4 is what? 4 is a whole number. 9.8 is a decimal. The 9 is a whole number. So remember, when adding decimals, we must line up the digits in the correct column, right? And so the the minus 9.8 will be canceled out. And so now we're left with our work to be simplified, and 4 plus 9.8 will give us 13.8 plus 2x. Ms. Woodside, can you see if anybody had 13.8? Are you able to see their work in?
I can see their answers and scanning through. We have no 13.8. I think they really got hooked up on
Okay, they did the
decimal placement.
decimals challenge them. So
Okay, I mean, Justin and Matthew just placed it in after
okay.
you said it, so I don't know.
All right, that is wonderful. At least they recognize. Once they recognize a mistake and can correct that, we'll be fine. So now we need to divide both sides by 2. And so now the x will be left by itself. When we simplify, we now have 6.9 is equal to x, or we can reverse it and write x is equal to 6.9. Did we have any 6.9 as an answer?
Yes, we had a lot of those
Very
going through.
good. Congratulations to those persons who worked well with the decimals. Now, it's time to show your stuff. Solve the following equations. Be sure to include the variable with your answer. And you have 6 of them, and you have about 7 minutes to work those 6 problems. So go. Start. The time is on for you to work the 6 problems.
Whoever is scribbling on the screen, can you stop?
Yes, please. To your working in the chat, please. So, or you do your working on your paper with your pen and then put your answers in the chat. how the answers are coming? Ms. Cunliffe, Ms. Woodside, how the answers are coming in? Are we making progress?
We are.
Okay. How many persons are finished with up to number 4?
Good job, Malik. So far, I only see one person whose answers progressed to number 4, but
Okay.
they're working through them.
Okay. Welcome, Ms. Newbold.
Thank you, darling.
We missed you earlier.
Technical difficulties again.
All right, ma'am. I know, I can attest to that. I know that too well.
They're trying to get me sorted out.
Okay. I hope you plan to stay with us.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, it seems as though some students are checking out because now we have only 200, so we can go ahead with the answers. Panelists, are you ready?
Yeah, we can go ahead.
Okay, number 1, 3x take away 2 is equal to 2x plus 1. Our answer, please check your answers. X is equal to 3. Remember, we're now going through the process now because we've already done that. Number 2, K is equal to 4. Number 3, X is equal to 4. Number 4, P is equal to 2. Number 5, X is equal to 1.1. And number 6, Y is equal to 1. Do we have, if you have answered all 6 problems correctly, could you just say yes? How many yes do we have? Do we have quite a few of them? Or no one reached the number 6?
I saw a few. There are a few.
Okay, very, very good. So remember the 3 steps. Step number 1, combine variable terms by adding or subtracting one of the variable terms to each side. Step number 2, you combine constant terms by adding or subtracting one of the constant terms to each side. And step number 3, we now have a one-step equation where you will undo multiplication or division to find your solution. Now, so how did you do on the practice? Ryan is representing. We can't put all of you up here, so we're dealing with Ryan as your representative. And he says, I did great with your help. Understanding the concept made things easier. Okay, I'm glad you understood. For those of you who followed the steps and understood the concept, please continue to practice. Ryan, on behalf of the students who understood, said that he did great with the help. Understanding the concepts made things easier for him. So it will also make things easier for you if you follow the concepts and the steps that you are taught. Now, are there any pointers you can give me to remember all the steps? Continue to practice so you can remember. Okay? He said he will remember and he will try to practice, practice, practice. And so what you students need to do is keep practicing, right? So now my work is finished. The class is finished. I trust that we don't have time for you to do the worksheet, but we have made up a very, very interesting worksheet for you, which will be placed with the lesson for you to probably download and work so you can get some added practice. Okay. So enjoy the rest of your day and we will see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Please try to be on time.
Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to your mathematics lesson. Our topic for today is telling time to the hour. Let's go over our lesson objectives. At the end of this lesson, students will be able to identify the various parts of a clock, explain the purpose of each part of the clock discussed in this lesson, and read the time on a clock to the hour. Before we begin, let's go over some keywords that you will be introduced to during this lesson. Our first word is clock. Clock. The next word is minute hand. Minute hand. Hour hand. Hour hand. Hour. Hour. O'clock. O'clock. A clock tells the time. It has different parts. One of the parts of a clock is it has a face. A clock has a face. And on this face, there are numbers. The numbers 1 through 12 are on the face of a clock. A clock also has 2 hands. Each hand on the clock has a name. The long hand is called the minute hand. The short hand is also called the hour hand. The hands of a clock tell us what time it is. When the long hand points to 12, it is always o'clock. Now we can write the time with the word o'clock, O''CLOCK, or we can write it in all numbers with 00. So o'clock could be the word o'clock, or it can be written as 00. The short hand on the clock shows the hour. Let's do an example. Let's use the clock that is on your screen on top of the chalkboard. On this clock, you will see that the short hand or the hour hand is pointing to the number 1, while the long hand or the minute hand is pointing to 12. So what time is it, boys and girls? It is 1 o'clock. So as you can see, there are 2 ways to write it. 1 and the word o'clock, or 1:00. Let's play a little game. Can you tell me the time? I am going to show you clocks showing different times, and you have to guess what time it is. Are you ready? What time is it? Our first clock is showing the short hand on the number 2 or pointing to the number 2. And the long hand or the minute hand is pointing to 12. So, is it A, 4 o'clock? Or is it B, 2 o'clock? If you said B, 2 o'clock, you are correct. Let's do another one. This clock is showing the short hand or the hour hand pointing to the number 5. And the long hand or the minute hand is pointing to the number 12. So what time is it? Is it A, 5 o'clock? Or is it B, 8 o'clock? If you said A, 5 o'clock, then you are correct. How about another one? This clock is showing the short hand or the hour hand pointing to 7, and the long hand or the minute hand is pointing to 12. So what time is it? Is it A, 7 o'clock? Or is it B, 3 o'clock? If you said A, 7 o'clock, ding, 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 you're correct again. All right, I think we can do one more. This clock is showing the short hand or the hour hand pointing to the number 10. And the long hand or the minute hand is pointing to 12. So, is it A, 11 o'clock? Or is it B, 10 o'clock? If you said B, 10 o'clock, then you are absolutely correct. Super job, excellent work. Now let's go over everything we've covered in this lesson. We know that the hands of a clock tell us what time it is. The hour hand tells the hour. The minute hand tells the minutes. And we also know that when the minute hand is on 12, it is always o'clock. Well, boys and girls, we've come to the end of our lesson today, and you've been a wonderful audience. So thank you for joining in our mathematics lesson with the topic telling time to the hour. Can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye.